In this video, let's see the difference between series, data frame, and MultiIndex. This chart here is an example of time series. It shows how the Google stock price vary over time. It is a time series because you have the time dimension. You have data from September 2015 to 2020. Here is the official documentation for Pandas series. A series is one-dimension array. See that is including time series. If you see the list of parameters of series, there is no column because this is one-dimension array. This table here is an example of cross-section data. In the first column, you see the name of the companies, and the second column, the stock price of these companies. For all these columns, you don't see any variable for time. For example, the variable volume, it varies over company, but not over time. That means that this table is a cross-section data because this is a snapshot of just one point of time or period of time. Now, let's see the documentation for Dataframe. Dataframe is a two-dimensional tabular data. In the parameter list, you see columns. We have here the idea of cross-section data. These are examples of cross-section data. The attributes were measured just one point of time. This table here is the stock price of Google over time. Therefore, this is a time series data. You have a variable for time. Panel data is when you combine time series and cross-section. We have this variable here, census year, that captures time. This variable here is the firm identification. For example, for the firm 13, you have data for two periods of time, 1929 and 1931. We can observe for that firm the average salary decreased by half during the Great Depression. Therefore, panel data is when you observe the same unit of analysis for more than one period of time. Usually, the study of econometrics is divided based on data type. See the title of this book, Time Series Analysis, and see the title of this book, Econometric Analysis of Cross-Section and Panel Data. Let's see the topics covered by this time series book. See that Hamilton started teaching difference equation, stationary arm process, forecasting, vector autoregression. Let's see now the topics covered by Udrich. He starts with the causal relationships. We can see here in the chapter 10, panel data models, random or fixed effects. Overall, it makes sense make this division between time series and the panel data. Both books cover different topics and methods. Time series focus on forecasting. Usually people interested in panel data, they are looking to establish causation rather than correlation. Now that we know the logic of the division of the data types, let's see how this is implemented in Python. Now, let's see the documentation of Pandas panel. It is a three-dimensional array, but it was deprecated a long time ago. The command panel, it was replaced by the concept of MultiIndex. Now, let's open the documentation of MultiIndex. We can manipulate data with arbitrary number of dimensions in lower dimensional data structure like series and the data frame. I'm using Python as example, but what I'm talking here is valid for whatever software, R, Stata, and SAS, etc. Before I told you that this is a panel data, but technically it's not ready for analysis. You don't see a MultiIndex here. This is just a simple index. If you run regression with this data, the computer will treat this data as cross-section. We have to declare the data as a panel data. The reference to the dataset is df, data frame. We have to use the method setIndex to declare as a panel data. The first variable is the unit of analysis, and I want to use the firm identification. The second variable is for time. Now see the result. Firm ID became index and census years as well. Note that firm ID and census year, they are not anymore columns in the dataset. They are not anymore variables. they are indexed. Now, in this data structure, I can deploy panel data techniques like fixed effect. In this table here, I add count as index. With Pandas MultiIndex, we can have 3 indices. But the question is, should we have 3 indices? The answer is no, because you use this library here to deploy the panel techniques, linear models 4.17. The library linear model needs the data in this way. We need that the variable for time to be the second variable. If you switch this order, all the computations will be wrong. If you want to do analysis at count level rather than firm level, there is no problem to put count here. What you cannot do is reverse the order. The difference between panel data and the cross-section and the time series, it's about the indices. If you work with a cross-section or a pure time series, you don't need to worry about all this discussion because you have just one index. It looks that this is a 2-dimensional array, but it's not. Additional dimensions will affect all the procedures. For example, data cleaning, how to deal with missing values, how to calculate the standard errors.